I am grateful for godly men. In the culture of our church, we're really into being godly men and iron sharpening iron. I think that's an amazing thing. We also have a great women's ministry, and the women really take care of each other in great godly ways. Grateful for all of that happening within my church. When I think of godly men, many names come to mind, but January 15th is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And I blogged about this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to come back to that again in video form. I kind of have a connection with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I do. I felt it since I was 9 years old. In April of 1968, he went to Memphis and he gave a speech in support of sanitation workers who were on strike. And we call it the mountaintop speech, or I guess I call it that. So funny, the whole mountaintop thing that he referred to was only the last paragraph of the speech. He says, "I've been to the mountain," and he had seen the promised land. That's pretty amazing. Of course, he had not been to the mountaintop literally. He had been there figuratively, but he had seen the promised land. And it was such an inspirational speech. And for some reason, we moved there to Memphis about 3 months after he gave the speech, 3 months after he was killed in Memphis. And so I have had that kind of weird connection all my life. When I see his name, when I go into cities, it seems like in almost every city that you go to, there's a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. drive or something like that. So I just am always drawn back to that time in my life. He said he'd been to the mountain. He was really taking us back in that speech to when God took Moses up to the top of the mountain and showed him the promised land. I want to read that for you. Deuteronomy chapter 34, verses 1 through 5. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, the land of Judah, as far as the western sea, the Negeb, the plain, that is the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. And the Lord said to him, "This is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and I will give it to your offspring. I will let you see it with your eyes, but you shall not go over there." So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord. Because of Moses' sin, he was able to lead the people to the promised land, but he wasn't able to go into the promised land. And Dr. King, in that speech, spoke of a promised land. And he said he felt like he wasn't going to be able to go there either. And sure enough, he wasn't. This man named James Earl Ray decided to take matters into his own hand, and he shot Dr. King and killed him there in Memphis, and Dr. King never saw the promised land. Dr. King had a way with words, and I think we miss his type today. A man of peace and yet a man of action. It's not a contradiction. And he led many good people in the civil rights movement. We're grateful for him, and I wish we had more men like him. I'm really tired of the race baiting that goes on in our society today. I hate it. I hate it. So Dr. King went to the mountaintop figuratively and saw the promised land but never got there. Moses went to the mountaintop literally, saw the promised land, but he didn't go there either. It reminds me because, end times, right? End times is a thing. There's going to be a mountaintop in the end times, in the millennial reign of Christ. It's going to be very impressive, a very impressive mountaintop. Let me read a couple of passages to you. One's found in Isaiah chapter 2 and one's in Zechariah 14. Just listen to these about the mountaintop experiences that are ahead for us who love the Lord. "It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it, and many people shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He will judge between the nations, and shall decide disputes for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. That's peace. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. That's Isaiah 2:2-4. It talks about the mountaintop of the Lord, the highest of all the mountains. Listen to this, Zechariah 14. On that day living water shall flow out from Jerusalem, half of them to the eastern sea and half to the western sea. It shall continue in summer as in winter, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day the Lord will be one and his name one. The whole land will be turned into a plain from Geba to Rimmon south of Jerusalem. But Jerusalem, listen to this, will remain aloft on its site, from the gate of Benjamin to the place of its former gate, to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the king's wine presses. And it shall be inhabited, for there shall never again be a decree of utter destruction. Jerusalem shall dwell in security. Then everyone who survives of all the nations that have come against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the feasts of booths. There's going to be an earthquake when the day of the Lord begins, when the sign of the Lord appears in the heavens. And Revelation chapter 6, at the end of that chapter, it's about the sign of the coming of the Lord just before the rapture and just before the wrath of God is poured out in Revelation, starting in Revelation chapter 8. And there's this earthquake, and it shapes the earth and reshapes the earth, and islands disappear, and mountains go away, and Jerusalem, all of Israel, is actually raised up and to be the highest of all the mountains in the earth, and we will go up to that mountain to worship. That's what it's going to be like, and it's all that peace, right? Beat swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks, and nation will not fight against nation. There's going to be peace for 1,000 years, 1,000 years, as Jesus Christ reigns on the earth. I am looking forward to that day, and I hope you are too. Listen, we get to participate in that day if we love the Lord with all of our heart, trust in him, and we give ourselves to him, and we pursue a relationship with him and trust in the work that Jesus Christ did on the cross for us. We get to be a part of that worship. And if not, well then, and you die in your sin, well then you're not part of that worship. And there's a whole different plan for you, and it's called the Great White Throne Judgment, and you don't want to be a part of that. So it's a great day. It's a great month. Dr. Martin Luther King drew us to these thoughts, and I am drawn to him and thoughts of him even this month, this week. And I want to say thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., for showing us the way. Thank you. Thank you, Moses, for showing us the way. Thank you, God, for showing us the way. And thank you to the prophets who would write and reveal to us these different aspects of what it's going to be like to live and to reign and serve and worship Jesus Christ on the mountaintop of all mountaintops. I am looking forward to that day, and I hope you'll be there with me.